guy at my daughter's school told me I should be grateful he's even interested in me because no real man wants a single mother. I've been a single mom for 4 years. My daughter Willa is 6. Her dad left before she was born, and I haven't heard from him since. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because I need you to understand that I have done everything alone, and I am not desperate. I am not lonely. I am not waiting for someone to save me. I own a 2-bedroom townhouse that I bought by myself when Willa was 2. I work as a veterinary technician at an animal hospital 15 minutes from her school. I make good money. I have a retirement account. I drive a car I bought new off the lot 3 years ago, and I've never missed a payment. I pick Willa up from school every day at 3:15. I cook dinner every night. I help with homework. I read to her before bed. On weekends we go to the park or the library, or we bake something messy in the kitchen. My life is full. My life is good. I am not missing anything. Then I met Roderick. Roderick has a son named Benji who's in Willa's class. I'd seen him at drop-off a few times. He drives a loud truck and always parks in the fire lane even though there are open spots 10 feet away. The first time he talked to me was at a school bake sale in October. He walked up while I was setting out the brownies I'd made and told me I looked too young to have a kid in 1st grade. I said thank you and went back to arranging the table. He stood there. He asked if Willa's dad was in the picture. I said no. He nodded like I'd just confirmed something he already knew. He said that must be tough doing it all alone. I told him I was fine. He said yeah, but it would be nice to have some help though, right? I didn't answer that. I smiled and walked away because I was at my daughter's school and I wasn't about to have that conversation next to a folding table full of Rice Krispie treats. The next week at pickup, Roderick found me again. He asked for my number. I told him I wasn't looking to date anyone right now. He said who said anything about dating and winked at me. I said no thank you and got in my car. That should have been the end. It was not the end. Roderick started showing up earlier to pick up so he'd be there when I arrived. He'd lean against his truck and wave me over. He'd make comments about how good I looked. He'd ask where I was going after this. He'd say things like, you deserve a night off and I know a great place. Every single time I said no politely. I said no firmly. I said no while smiling. I said no while not smiling. I said no 12 different ways across 3 weeks and Roderick heard none of them. Then he changed tactics. He started going through the kids. He told Benji to invite Willa on a play date. Willa came home begging me to let her go to Benji's house. I called the number on the class contact sheet to talk to Benji's mother about the details. Roderick answered. He said Benji's mom wasn't in the picture either. Then he said, see, we have a lot in common. I told him I'd think about the play date and hung up. I let Willa go because she wanted to play with her friend, and I wasn't going to punish my daughter because her friend's father couldn't take a hint. I dropped her off on Saturday morning. Roderick opened the door in a collared shirt and cologne. There were candles on the kitchen table. He had made brunch, 2 place settings. The kids were already in the backyard. He'd planned this. He'd used our 6-year-olds to set up a date I never agreed to. I told Willa to get her shoes. Roderick blocked the doorway. Not aggressively. He just stood there. He said, come on, just sit down and eat. He said I went through all this trouble. He said you're a single mom. It's not like guys are lining up. I looked at him. I asked him to repeat that last part. He did. He said it's not like guys are lining up. He said most men don't want to deal with another man's kid, and that I should appreciate that he was willing to. Like my daughter was a burden he was graciously agreeing to tolerate. Like I was damaged goods on a clearance shelf, and he was the generous customer taking a chance. I called Willa inside. I picked up her jacket from the couch. Roderick said I was overreacting. He said he didn't mean it like that. He said I was too sensitive. I walked past him through the doorway without saying a word. I drove home. Willa asked why we left early. I told her something came up, but she could see Benji at school on Monday. The following week, Roderick approached me at pickup again. He acted like nothing had happened. He asked if I wanted to try again this weekend. I told him clearly and slowly that I was not interested, that I would never be interested, that he needed to stop asking. He got angry. He said I was stuck up. He said I thought I was better than him. Then he said the thing that made everything click. He said the problem with single moms is they think they still get to be picky. I let that sentence sit in the air. Then I walked into the school. I went straight to the front office. The woman at the desk was named Colleen. She had been working at that school for 11 years, and she knew every parent and every situation. I told her I needed to speak with the principal. She asked if everything was all right. I said no. She picked up the phone, and 2 minutes later I was sitting in the principal's office across from a woman named Dr. Whitfield. I told Dr. Whitfield everything. I started from the bake sale and went through every interaction, the repeated asks, the comments about my appearance, the question about Willa's dad within 30 seconds of our first conversation, the fake play date, the candles and the brunch I didn't agree to, the doorway blocking, the line about guys not lining up, and the final comment at pickup about single moms not getting to be picky. I gave her dates where I could remember them. I told her the bake sale was October 14th. I told her the fake brunch was a Saturday in early November. I told her the final comment at pickup was November 19th because I wrote it down in my phone that night. I wrote it down because something told me I might need to remember the exact words and the exact day. Dr. Whitfield listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. She filled 2 pages. When I finished, she set her pen down and said, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you feel safe at pickup? I said I didn't feel unsafe, but I felt cornered. I told her there was a difference between a man who might hurt you and a man who won't leave you alone, and that both of those situations require someone to intervene. She nodded. She said she was going to review the school's code of conduct for parent behavior on campus, and that she would be reaching out to Roderick directly. She said in the meantime, if I wanted to, I could arrange to pick Willa up from a side entrance to avoid contact. I told her I would not be using a side entrance. I said I have been picking my daughter up from the front door of this school since she was in pre-K, and I am not going to rearrange my routine because a man cannot hear the word no. Dr. Whitfield looked at me for a second and then said, good. I want that on the record. I left her office and drove home. 2 days later, I got a call from Colleen at the front desk. She said Dr. Whitfield had met with Roderick that morning. She said Roderick was told that his behavior toward another parent on school property had been reported and documented. He was told that any further unwanted contact would be considered harassment and could result in a formal complaint to the school board and potentially to local law enforcement. Colleen said Roderick did not take it well. He raised his voice. He said this was ridiculous. He said he was just being friendly and that I was blowing things out of proportion. He said he was a single father too, and that he was just trying to connect with someone who understood his situation. He said the school had no right to police how parents interacted in a parking lot. Dr. Whitfield told him that 12 documented instances of a parent pursuing another parent after being told no was not friendly. It was a pattern. She told him the school absolutely had the right and the obligation to ensure every parent felt safe on campus. She told him that if he wanted to dispute the documentation, he was welcome to review it with the school board. Roderick stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. He pointed at Dr. Whitfield and said, "This is what happens when women run things." Then he stormed out. He slammed the office door hard enough that Colleen felt it at the front desk. Dr. Whitfield added his comment about women running things to the file. Colleen told me that part specifically. She said she wanted me to know the kind of man I was dealing with in case I had any doubts. That afternoon at pickup, I parked in my usual spot. I got out of my car. I stood by the entrance like I always did. Roderick was across the lot leaning against his truck. He stared at me. He didn't come over. He didn't wave. He just stared with his arms crossed and his jaw tight like I had taken something from him. Like my refusal to be flattered by his attention had cost him something he was owed. I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I didn't adjust my position or angle my body toward the door or do any of the small unconscious things women do when a man is watching them and they want to seem smaller. I stood exactly where I was and I looked right back at him until Willa came through the door and grabbed my hand. We went home. I made spaghetti. We watched a movie. I put her to bed. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down everything that had happened since October in a notebook. Dates, quotes, locations. I wrote it all down because I wanted a record that existed outside of my memory. I wanted something on paper in case the school ever needed it again. The next morning at drop-off, 2 other moms approached me in the parking lot. One was named Greta and the other was named Inez. Greta said she heard what happened with Roderick. I asked how she knew. She said Roderick had been complaining about me to anyone who would listen in the parent pickup line. He told people I got him called into the principal's office like a child. He told people I was dramatic and couldn't take a compliment. He told people he was just trying to be nice and that I was punishing him for showing interest. He told one dad that women like me were the reason good men stopped trying. He said that in a school parking lot in front of other parents while waiting to pick up his 6-year-old son. That's who Roderick was. A man who could stand 50 feet from a building full of children and say women like me out loud without hearing how it sounded. Greta said she wanted me to know that Roderick had done the same thing to her the previous year. She said he had asked her out repeatedly at school events. She said he made comments about her body within earshot of other parents. She said at a fall festival he stood behind her in the food line and told her she must work out because she didn't look like a woman with 3 kids. She said he found her email through the school directory and sent her a message that said just 2 single parents grabbing dinner. What's the harm? She told him she was married. He said that's a shame. She said he told her she should feel flattered because most guys wouldn't look twice at a woman with 3 kids. 3 kids. That was Greta's version of my line about guys not lining up. Same playbook, same entitlement, same belief that a woman with children should be grateful for his attention. Greta said she didn't report it because she didn't want the drama. She said she just started sending her husband to do pickups for a while until Roderick lost interest. She said her husband wanted to confront Roderick directly, but she talked him out of it because she didn't want a scene at her children's school. She said she regretted that decision every time she saw Roderick in the parking lot talking to another woman. Inez said Roderick had also approached her at a school fundraiser the year before that. She said it was less aggressive, but that he had made a comment about her being a young widow and how that must be hard, and that he knew how to make it easier. He said it with a smile like he was offering to carry her groceries. Inez said she shut it down quickly, but that the comment stayed with her for weeks. She said she felt like he had scanned the room and identified her as the most vulnerable person in it. She said that's what it felt like being selected. 3 women, 3 years, same man, same approach. He identified mothers who he believed were vulnerable, single, widowed, overwhelmed. He targeted women he thought were too exhausted or too grateful to say no. And when they did say no, he reframed it as their problem. They were stuck up, they were dramatic, they were too picky. The refusal was never valid because in Roderick's mind, a woman raising children alone didn't have the standing to refuse. I asked Greta and Inez if they would be willing to report their experiences to Dr. Whitfield. Greta said yes immediately. Inez hesitated. She said she didn't want to relive it. I told her I understood and that there was no pressure. Then Inez said, actually yes. She said if Roderick was still doing this after 3 years, then her staying quiet hadn't protected anyone. It had just delayed the next woman's turn. She said she'd rather be uncomfortable for one afternoon than let him do this to someone else. The 3 of us went to Dr. Whitfield's office together during morning drop-off. We each told our story separately. Dr. Whitfield documented everything. She said with 3 independent reports spanning 3 school years, the school had sufficient grounds to escalate the matter. She said she would be consulting with the school board and that Roderick would be receiving a formal written warning. She also said that depending on the board's assessment, he could face restricted access to school property, meaning he would be required to stay in his vehicle during pickup and drop-off and would not be permitted to approach other parents on campus. She thanked us for coming forward. She said most people don't. She said in 11 years as a principal, she had dealt with parent conflicts dozens of times, but that formal harassment complaints from multiple women about the same individual were rare because most women did exactly what Greta did. They adjusted their own behavior to avoid the man instead of asking the institution to address his. She said that shouldn't be how it works and that she was glad we were changing that. Greta cried a little in the hallway after we left. She said she felt stupid for not saying something sooner. Inez put her arm around her and said, "You're saying something now. That's what matters." I didn't cry. I was too focused on what came next. 2 weeks later, the letter was sent. Roderick received a formal notice from the school board outlining the complaints and the behavioral restrictions. He was told that any further incidents would result in a full campus ban and referral to the authorities. I know this because Colleen told me. She wasn't supposed to, but she did, and I appreciated it. Roderick pulled Benji from the school within the month. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving. He just stopped showing up. The truck disappeared from the fire lane. His name was removed from the class contact sheet. Colleen confirmed that Benji had been withdrawn and transferred to a different elementary school across the district. She said Roderick listed the reason as personal preference. Personal preference. Not I harassed 3 women at this school and got formally reprimanded by the board. Personal preference. Willa came home one day and said Benji wasn't in her class anymore. She was sad. I let her be sad because that was real and she was allowed to feel it. I told her that sometimes friends go to different schools and that it doesn't mean they can't be friends. She asked if she did something wrong. That question broke my heart. I got down on her level and told her she did absolutely nothing wrong and that sometimes grown-up things happen that don't have anything to do with kids. She accepted that the way 6-year-olds accept things, quickly and completely. She asked what was for dinner. The weeks after Roderick left were quiet in the way I had wanted them to be all along. I pulled into the parking lot at 3:10. I stood by the entrance. I talked to Greta about her weekend and Inez about her garden and another mom named Paulette about the school's spring recital. I collected Willa and her backpack and her latest crayon drawing and we drove home. Nobody followed me to my car. Nobody leaned against a truck waiting for me to walk past. Nobody told me I should be grateful. The parking lot was just a parking lot again. It was the place where I picked up my daughter, not a place where I had to calculate my route to avoid a man who couldn't hear no. Inez told me one afternoon that she had started doing pickups herself again instead of sending her mother. She said she hadn't realized how much of her routine she had adjusted around Roderick until he was gone. She said it was like removing a piece of furniture that had been blocking a hallway for years. Suddenly the space was open and you couldn't believe you had been squeezing past it for that long. 3 months after Roderick transferred Benji, I ran into him at a grocery store. I was in the cereal aisle with Willa. He came around the corner with Benji. Willa's face lit up. She said Benji and ran over and hugged him. The 2 kids immediately started talking like they hadn't missed a day. Roderick and I stood 6 feet apart in the cereal aisle saying nothing. He looked different, thinner, tired. He watched the kids for a moment and then looked at me. He said I owe you an apology. I didn't respond. He said I was out of line at the school and I know that now. I asked him what specifically he was apologizing for. He said for being pushy. I said that's not what you did. He looked confused. I said you didn't just pursue me, Roderick. You used our children to manufacture access to me. You set up a fake playdate with candles and brunch to trap me in your house. You blocked a doorway when I tried to leave. You told me I should be grateful for your attention because no one else would want me. You said single mothers don't get to be picky. You did the same thing to at least 2 other women at that school over 3 years. You told one of them she should feel flattered that you noticed her. You told another one you could make things easier for her like she was a project you were volunteering for. And when the school held you accountable, you told the principal this is what happens when women run things. That's not being pushy. That's a pattern. And the only reason you're standing in this cereal aisle apologizing is because there were consequences. Not because you woke up one morning and realized you were wrong. He didn't say anything for a while. Benji tugged on his sleeve and asked if he could get a cereal with marshmallows. Roderick looked down at his son and said, yeah, buddy, pick one out. Then he looked back at me and said, I'm sorry. I said, okay. I didn't say I forgive you because I didn't. I said, okay, because it was the most honest thing I could offer. The word sat between us like a receipt. Acknowledgement of the transaction, but nothing more. No warmth behind it, no door opening. Willa hugged Benji one more time and we finished our shopping and went home. I unpacked the groceries while Willa sat at the table drawing. She asked me if Benji's dad was nice. I said he's trying to be. She said he seemed sad. I looked at her. 6 years old and she could read a grown man's face better than he could read a room. I said sometimes people are sad because of choices they made. She said that's like when I break a crayon and then I'm sad. I said yes, baby. Exactly like that. That night after Willa went to bed, I sat on the couch with a glass of water and thought about what Roderick said at that fake brunch months ago. He said it's not like guys are lining up. I've turned that sentence over in my head more times than I should have. Not because it hurt, but because he believed it. He genuinely believed that a woman raising a child alone was operating from a deficit, that I was walking through life with a hole in my resume, and that any man willing to overlook it deserved a medal. He saw my daughter as a liability, and my independence as a phase I'd eventually grow out of once I realized how hard it was. He was wrong about all of it. The hard part was never being alone. The hard part was people like Roderick assuming that alone meant incomplete. I built this life on purpose. Every piece of it was chosen. The townhouse, the job, the schedule, the Saturday mornings with flour on the counter and Willa standing on a step stool cracking eggs into a bowl. None of that happened by accident. None of it happened because I was waiting for someone to show up and make it real. It was already real. He was right about one thing though. Guys are not lining up because I never opened a line. I never put out a sign. I never stood at a window looking for someone to show up and complete the picture. The picture was already complete. It's me and Willa and a townhouse with a paid mortgage and a kitchen that smells like banana bread on Saturday mornings. That's the whole picture. It doesn't need a man leaning against a truck in a fire lane to make it count. Greta texted me last week. She said a new dad at the school had started making comments to one of the younger moms during drop-off. She said the mom looked uncomfortable. She asked me what I thought she should do. I told her to walk over and introduce herself. I said sometimes the thing a woman needs most when a man won't stop talking is another woman standing next to her, not saying anything, not confronting anyone, just standing there so she knows she's not alone in it. Greta said she'd handle it on Monday. I didn't hear anything else about it, so I assume she did.
The fact that he did this to 3 different women over 3 years and nobody said anything until she did is exactly why speaking up matters. And the way he stormed out of the principal's office talking about this is what happens when women run things. Like, baby, that's exactly what should happen when women run things. Accountability. But for real, the ending got me. She's sitting on her couch at night and she's like, guys aren't lining up because I never opened a line. The picture is already complete. That's queen energy right there. I'm sorry. And little Willa comparing it to breaking a crayon? Honestly, that child is wise beyond her years. Anyway, minis, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.